Hi guys, this is James from TeaDB, bringing you InBetweenIsode number 27. So I'm going along with the mature/aged Pu-erh route again. So this one's for you, Uncle Larry. I'll probably end up reviewing a oolong of some sort, one of the nicer ones, next time. But let me know what you guys like to hear. These things are really not backlogged at all, so I can quickly make these videos kind of in response to what you guys have to say. And so today I am doing a repeat of sorts, but I'm also doing it slightly differently. And so this is sort of a comparison I've been wanting to do for some time, and I've actually just have not done it. And it's something that I should have done, so I'm doing it entirely on camera, and that is testing out my Daiso tins. And so I'm doing a comparison of the 1990s Hong Kong style cake from W2T. And this is a tea that I usually recommend to people that just want to get a lot of experience, and I usually recommend people pick up a sample of this just because I think it's a really good tea to get your feet sort of wet in the more traditional style wet stored Pu-erh, and I found very, very mixed reactions to these sorts of teas. And so this one is nice and aired out in that sense, so I don't think it's the dankest, which some people like and other people have a harder time with. So I think it's a really friendly cake in that sense. But one of the things I regularly do, and I've talked about this in a couple InBetweenIsodes in the past, is I will tin my teas, and especially for these traditional stored or wet stored Pu-erhs, what it really does is to help just air it out and break it up, and that's sort of how these cakes were traditionally consumed for dim sum or whatnot. And so today I have on my left the tinned version, and then on the right I have the version that I have just recently broken up. And so I have rinsed these teas. I have not drank them, as I anticipate that this sort of thing will maybe affect the first couple brews more so than the other brews. So I'm going to have a smell right now. So a very familiar smell, a very lot of sweetness. And this one actually, this being the Daiso tinned one, smells a little bit different. It sort of has this more bready smell to it. Whereas this one, I think I'm picking up on more storage smells, and it doesn't smell nasty or anything like that. But I do smell some of that more traditional, traditionally stored smells. All right, so we are going to brew this guy up. So we'll do the one that has just freshly been broken up from the cake, and I made sure to break up the pieces that I was getting from the cake as well, just to make this comparison as consistent as possible. If I were more serious about this, I would probably be doing some sort of cupping, but I like to enjoy my tea, and so gung fu is usually the way I go, and I usually don't end up cupping all that much. This is brewing a very crimson red liqueur. And we'll give this another steep. Gonna have another smell. So a lot of those familiar smells again, very similar. Some of that camphor, some of that really familiar fruity taste that you sort of get in these traditionally stored ones. I tried to describe it last time. It's a little bit of long on. It's a little bit of an elusive taste because it's not something you encounter really daily at all in sort of the Western world. But it definitely shows up a lot in HTs. Cheers, guys. So relatively smooth. There's not much dankness in it. There's also not a ton of flavor. I would say this tea is considerably thicker than the, well, thicker in my mind than the 2000 CNP 7532 TeaDB, which is a mouthful that I reviewed last week for the InBetweenIsode. I'm going to dump this so I can drink this in a timely manner. So very similar in the core of this, maybe even a little bit less bright. So it's smoothing out a little bit more of those lighter fruity tastes in this. Yeah, it's not quite as thick as the first brew actually, so I'd probably extend the steep time for the next brew. And to quickly touch on the parameters I'm using 4 grams for about 70 milliliters. These guy ones have been elusive in their actual capacity. Sometimes I've measured it at 60 milliliters, other times at 80. Alright, so now I am brewing the Daiso tinned one. Alright. And we will do one more. And really the best way to do this would be to either cup it or to do a fuller session, but we are doing the best we can under the time constraints, and probably what I'm going to do after this is toss both these brews in together into my Yixing pot of about 100 milliliters and finish off the session that way. Alright, so I'm going to compare their aromas again real fast. They definitely smell somewhat different, and it's hard to tell if that's because the temperature also is a little bit hotter in the one that I've recently brewed. Yeah, really interesting. Okay, alright, so this is releasing, I would say, a cleaner profile overall. There's more discernible flavors. Instead of the fruit, I'm getting more sort of like, I would say this tea is definitely smoother. It's probably a little creamier as well. The fruit is still there, but it's not as prevalent as the previous tea, or as not the previous tea, the full cake version. Interesting. This is also smoother, even smoother than the previous brew. This is probably the smoothest brew of all 4. The creaminess is also high. This also maintains a reasonable amount of thickness. And this indicates to me that this tea is just starting to hit its stride. Overall, it's hard to say which one I prefer. If you like, I think if you want to eliminate sort of that storage taste to it, tinning it is just a really good idea in general. And this is another thing to keep in mind when you get a sample or something like that. Oftentimes you're going to get a sample that's something like 25 grams. So what can be a really good idea is just leaving that bag open a little bit for these traditionally stored Pu-erhs, and also breaking up the leaves, and you're going to more closely replicate sort of the version that we're getting here through the tin, if you were to do that. And take some notes. You'd be surprised at how much these teas can change with a little bit of storage like that. Yeah, I would definitely say that tentatively I am leaning a bit towards enjoying that Daiso tinned one a bit more. So I'd recommend you guys definitely experiment a little bit around with your storage. I actually brewed the white tool, a tea that I find, or at least this specific tool that I got, to be a little bit danker than this tea in particular, and I ended up tinning up the whole tool. I have 5 of them. I have a full sleeve, and I found that, and this was judging mainly off of memory, that it was much improved from just breaking it up into small little Malchow form, even breaking up those leaves a little bit, and brewing it. A much cleaner profile, and I enjoyed it a good deal more. Before, it was kind of one of those teas that was really on the threshold of too dank for me to drink, but I would occasionally have a really good session with it. Denny really liked it, who tends to like these wetter stored teas as well. So let me know how you guys like this episode. If you guys would like to see other revisitations of teas that I have in tins, other comparisons, it'd be interesting to look at this under the lens of maybe something younger, like a young raw Pu-erh, so maybe one of those 2012 Iwu purples or something like that, just to see kind of how it affects it. These traditionally stored teas are definitely sort of its own thing. But yeah, I'm rambling on more than usual. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know how you like this episode, and let me know what you guys would like to see next.